Hold on. There you go. You're good.
So a little inside the Callahan podcast insight. I don't know what it was, a month ago or so. Dave Cullinane, my producer, was maybe it was 2 months ago. He was hot on the trail of Donald J. Trump. He said, "I feel we had a connection with the campaign. We had some people in there that knew we had a huge audience out there, knew they could have an impact if they came on." And so he said, "I think I might get stand by. I might get the president. I might get him." And it was, I think, a Thursday or Friday, and I was started to jot down some questions I might want to ask him. I've interviewed him before. We had him on the radio station during the New Hampshire primaries back when. I still have that. We still have that recording, by the way, if we want to play it sometime.
You should.
John Dennis and others were interviewing the president. It went well. We talked about Brady and the Patriots and that kind of stuff. But this was only a few weeks ago, and I said, the first question, the one question that I will, whenever I interview the president, this is what I'm going to start with. This is what I want. I genuinely want to know. I genuinely want to understand. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. I want to start with this. Why? Please help me out here. Why do you need the approval, the affection, the love of the mainstream media? Why do you want people like Bob Woodward to like you? Why don't you understand? This is another question.
First of all,
why don't you understand that they hate you? Can't you just accept the fact that they hate you? Why do you need their approval?
If he didn't think like that, then I wouldn't even had a chance of getting him on this show.
But you think I hate him? I don't hate him.
No, but I mean, like, just the fact that he's so addicted to press and coverage. I mean, they wouldn't even bother. But they would.
I mean, I understand why he was on. I understand why he was on with Hannity last night. I understand why he goes on Fox and Friends. I don't understand for the life of me why he would sit down for 18 hours with Bob Woodward. I think Reimer and I will agree on this, and I'll agree with all my Trump-hating friends on this. It's a flaw in his character. It's an insecurity where he thinks, I guess it's probably an overconfidence. He thinks when he sits down, he's going to be the one Republican president who charms Bob Woodward, and Bob Woodward will not write a negative word about him. That's what he thinks. And to me, it's utter insanity to think Bob Woodward is suddenly going to like you, Donald Trump. There's no chance, as we will soon learn when this book comes out, or we'll learn Sunday when the tapes come out on 60 Minutes. It was always a setup. It was always going to be a hit job. Why can't Donald Trump understand that?
I can't believe that our president basically confesses to mass murder, and your big takeaway is that he talked to Bob Woodward. I mean, really? And he did this to himself. How did Bob Woodward frame Trump here? Those are his tapes, his voice. How did Bob Woodward frame Trump?
I didn't say frame.
Trump incriminated himself.
Of course. I'm agreeing with you, Alex. First of all, there's nothing on those tapes that's incriminating.
What?
There's nothing
Jerry, he admitted he is a mass murderer, Donald Trump.
Okay, now you're losing. We just started this podcast and you're going off the rails.
I would think
mass murderer already. And I was hoping to see this morning, and I did. It was on Fox, of course. I also watched the Morning Joe this morning, and it's just one witness. I mean, what
do they think? They think
one interview after another from these crazy lefties who agree with you that he committed mass murder.
Like who? Joe Scarborough?
His some guy, Joe Madison, a syndicated radio guy or a serious radio guy, and then a bunch of academics and just all the usual. At any minute now, Noam Chomsky will be on there. Or Howard's. Are they still? Is Howard Zinn still alive? Yeah,
I don't know, but I read his book in high school. Howard Zinn.
Oh, of course you did. We all did. We had to. That was the white fragility of our time.
It was.
But
it's a pretty good read though. White Fragility is a terrible read.
I saw it. I talked to a guy who was trying to read it because he works for a college, and they had him read it. They said you have to read this, and he was on the beach and he's reading. I go, what the hell are you reading that for? He goes, I have to for work. He goes, it's the worst written book I've ever read. Book.
Matt Taibbi, who I don't know if you know Matt Taibbi.
That's how times have changed. I used to hate Matt Taibbi.
Yeah.
And now he's one of my favorites. It's bizarre. It's like Bill Maher. I've come around on Bill Maher because he's he hates Trump, of course, but he's a good guardian at the gate in this cancel culture war. But Matt Taibbi, did he review White Fragility?
Yeah, it's very funny. I'll send it to you. Yes, it was a funny review.
He's pretty good on Twitter. But see, we're going to agree that Trump was absolutely foolish to sit down and think he could charm Bob Woodward. We're going to disagree about the content, Alex. There's nothing in there that changes anybody's mind. No, nothing.
No, but it is pretty shocking that Trump, by the way, sounded more lucid in those tapes than I think he's ever sounded. And the fact that in February he knew that this could be transmitted through the air and then kept saying it would go away like that. Come on, Jerry.
But that's just Trump, you knew at the time that he was trying to downplay it. You knew at the time that he was going to take this positive outlook that we'll have he said just a couple of weeks ago, we'll have a vaccine by election day.
He's such a positive guy, is he not?
He's always going to do
positivity.
But there's nothing on those tapes, that at least that we've heard so far, that's going to change anybody's mind. Nothing on there. Especially when you see it, hear it, and then you see this montage of Democrats, and he was way ahead of the curve from the Biden can't go out there and say that he knew this was going to be bad and he warned the president. Biden was the worst. Biden was out there calling the president a xenophobe. He was saying it was not a big deal. Then you have all the usual subjects, one after another. Nancy Pelosi saying, "Come to Chinatown. Don't worry about it." You have Anderson Cooper and Chris Cuomo and these other hardcore Democrats saying it's not a big deal. They can't say they warned him and he ignored the warnings. By the way, you want to hear something that's just amazing to me right now? You're a big Tony Fauci guy, right? You're a big Dr. Fauci guy.
Not really, but go ahead.
I used to be, but he is the patron saint of the team lockdown, team apocalypse.
Yes, he's our man. We love him.
March, you can get this, Colony, March 9th. March 9th. Right about the time we were locking down the country, people had already died. There was some indications that it was much worse than we thought. March 9th, Tony Fauci said, if you booked a cruise, don't worry about it. Go on a cruise. He said there's nothing wrong with going on a cruise on March 9th. This was, a couple of weeks after Trump talked to Woodward. So. And Fauci's essentially defending Trump now because he knows that everybody felt the way Trump did. Nobody thought it was going to, result in whatever. I'm looking at the ticker on MSNBC. That's how much they're rooting for the virus. They have a ticker with the death toll on the screen all day.
Yeah, God forbid they, tell the news.
Does that seem like that they're looking at the considering the actual human life, or does that seem like they're rooting for this because it's going to hurt Trump?
Oh, of course they're rooting for it because it hurts Trump. I want to go back though quickly because I don't want to rehash the travel ban stuff with you. Woodward, why does Trump talk to Bob Woodward 18 times over a span of 7 months? Because he thinks it's cool. That's what it comes down to. He thinks it's cool. Even though he's the president of the United States, he gets a kick out of talking to Bob Woodward. He gets a kick out of being on the cover of the New York Times. I bet he saves every front page he's been on of the New York Times. He loves it. That's why he loves it.
It is incredible. And he thinks, for some bizarre reason, that this time will be different, that he knows that Woodward's written dozens of books attacking, criticizing Republicans and others. And he thinks this time, Bob and I, we're hitting it off and, find some common ground. This time will be different, which is insane. At the same time, the guy calls the media the enemy of the people. The guy calls.
He loves the media, though. You know that.
This is the Washington Post we're talking about, correct? I realize Woodward is kind of his own entity out there, and he writes books and he makes a fortune. But he's essentially a Washington Post guy, right? I mean,
but nobody loves the media more than Donald Trump. I mean, he does sit down interviews with the New York Times all the time in the Oval Office, and he loves the media, Jerry. You know that he loves it. He can't get enough, and he thinks that these interviews went well. I mean, he thinks that he always does great. I mean, I was reading something that terrible Axios interview with that Australian guy, Jonathan Swan. Trump tells aides that he thinks that was a great interview too. Like he thinks he does great at all these.
I'm looking at interview with Claire McCaskill from Missouri. Claire McCaskill now on MSNBC, of course, and she says this is beyond folly. This is the ultimate stupidity. He is so stupid, and he knows. He did the last interview a month ago. He did the last interview. Blah, 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 blah. The book is coming out within 2 months of the election with tapes, 18 hours of tapes, hours and hours of tapes. This president is the stupidest president that's ever held office. This is a Democrat, obviously a hardcore Democrat who hates Trump, but she's just talking about the decision to talk to Woodward and give his opponents this much opposition research. Just give it to them.
Hold on there. Here's a question though. You told me a couple minutes ago that you think nothing incriminating was said on these tapes. So what's the big deal if he talked to Woodward if nothing bad was said?
Because A, we don't know everything yet. He's saving some for the 60 Minutes and for the book. And B, they can twist it and say, look, he knew people were going to die. He committed mass murder, as you just said, which is insane. But if he didn't sit down with Woodward, we would be talking about, I don't know, him getting nominated for a Nobel Prize.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We would be talking about, or at least I would be talking about, pulling troops out of everywhere, out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, out of Germany, Korea, Japan, which is the best thing he could do in the next 2 months. Instead, he hands them the news cycle. Donald Trump handed them the news cycle, and 24/7 on, the usual places, MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times, Boston Globe, are just eating this up. I was just looking at the Globe website. I can't read this stuff because it's a paywall, but
I get 5 free articles a month.
It's the number 5 news item, on the most popular news items, number 5. So it's not that big a deal. What he said is not that incriminating. It's not that, except if you twist it like you did. And, that's what I expect from you and others. You expect to look at it the worst way possible, but there's nobody whose mind was changed from the content that we've seen so far. Nobody saying, oh my God, he knew, he downplayed it. That's what he does. And in his explanation that he was trying to keep people from panicking is a good one.
Is it
his job, by the way? Is it his job to protect us? I mean, he's a president is just a cheerleader, and it can go either way. And he chose his way. I mean,
he admits that. He says, I'm a cheerleader.
Well. Correct. That's what he said. But I just mean, is it his job to protect us? You know what I mean? Like you said,
yes.
He has blood on his hands. He killed Americans. It's not his job.
Well, it's his job, though, to be truthful with the people he's elected to supposedly represent. And, I mean, he was saying as recently as early March, this thing would go, and as recently as like May, this thing would just go away. And we find out now in early February, he knew I mean, that's the most surprising thing, that he actually understands the coronavirus and how it's transmitted. Well, he knew that and still chooses to lie about it,
that's because Tucker Carlson drove to Mar-a-Lago. This is a big story that's never really been reported. Drove there during some kind of holiday weekend. I don't know what it was, but and confronted him face to face and says, you got to take this seriously. Tucker Carlson did that, which is kind of strange, but
that was in early March, though. These Woodward tapes
early March.
These Woodward tapes are in early February.
But here's the thing: is if you were gonna, and you'd have to be a paid ad because nobody in the media will do it except Fox. You could take his comments to Woodward and put them in a spot, an ad, where he's where Biden is saying he's a xenophobe and a racist for shutting down travel. Yeah. I mean, you could say, he shut down travel from Europe and people went nuts about that. You could have all the comments. You could have de Blasio saying, come on down and, eat out and go to rallies and go to parades. You could have Cuomo saying it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. There's so much sound of Democrats who were way behind him in terms of taking this seriously. It doesn't work politically, in my opinion, but I do question his judgment, and I don't blame the people from saying what a fool he is for sitting down with Woodward and thinking. I mean, it's just the judgment involved here where I say he's president, he's kind of busy. There's lots of media people who would like to talk to him.
He's not busy though.
He is.
He's watching TV and
he's watching. He wasn't. It might have been golfing at Mar-a-Lago. It was the middle of winter, but and he thinks Bob Woodward is going to give him a fair shake. It ain't going to happen.
Because he thinks it's so cool to be talking to Mr. Watergate himself. Like, I mean, he felt bad that he didn't talk to Woodward for the last book. The last book Woodward wrote, Trump was like, I can't believe I didn't know he wanted to interview me. So, like, you know.
Have you ever seen Bernstein on TV on MSNBC?
No, I have. Yes,
nobody is more unhinged. We talked about Noam Chomsky and nobody hates Trump more than Bernstein. And somehow he thinks Woodward is going to be different. Woodward is going to, like him.
Well, Woodward did do Trump a favor. Woodward sat on these tapes.
I was going to say, I was going to get to that, Reimer. I was going to get to the next question here. This is an icon to the left, an icon in the media. This is Mr. Watergate himself, Bob Woodward. See, he has this information in February, and he sits on it for 6 months to sell a book for two reasons: to hurt Trump in election season, and to sell a book, when summer's over and everyone's getting back to work. He's going to go on 60 Minutes and he's going to push this book pre-election. If you're a real reporter, you have news. You have a big story in February, March, April, May, and you sit on it that whole time. That is disgraceful when you think about what Woodward did just for his own personal gain. He's got a huge story. He's got a media outlet, the Washington Post, that would certainly love him to write this story for page one. And he says, no, I need to cash in. I mean, this guy's wealthy beyond all. Yeah. He's one of the most successful financially, one of the successful journalists ever. And he sits on the story till September or who knows what he's sitting on now. Maybe he'll sit on it until October.
What's his title at the Post? He's an editor, isn't he?
He's some sort of editor.
But he's like an unpaid editor?
I think it might be like editor
emeritus.
Yeah,
I would just think there would be some kind of journalistic standard if you're going to be employed by a publication. It's one thing if he wasn't employed by them and he was just writing a book and held that information. But if you're working for a newspaper, I don't know. That seems.
See, I think it. If you're an objective observer or journalism professor, you think this is outrageous. But if you're the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, or anybody who works there, Philip Rucker or Bump or all these other hacks, you're saying good on Woodward, because we need to inflict the most damage possible on the Trump campaign. They're okay with that. They're of a like mind. They want to hurt Trump. They don't care about the public, or they don't care about people dying of the virus or the public's level of knowledge on the virus. They just want to hurt Trump. So I'm sure the Washington Post is okay with it. But if you're a media critic, Reimer, I used to call you the only media critic in Boston. Don't you find that kind of ridiculous that the guy had this huge story and just sat on it for 6 months?
Totally ridiculous, but I think we agree, but we have different reads on it. Like, I think it's emblematic of how the Beltway press has covered Trump from the beginning. They care more about access and profit over actually, delivering the truth. And
I mean, they want to hurt Trump, but you're right. I mean, in this case, this is the best way to do it. Wait for the election season.
See, but I disagree, though. This could have, he had this information in real time where Trump, again, in late February, is at the CDC in Atlanta saying this is going to go away. It's not a big deal. It's like the flu. And then Woodward has tapes of Trump literally contradicting himself, saying this is not the strenuous flu. This is much more deadly. And he doesn't. If he released the tapes then, I think it could have really changed. I don't know how much it would have changed, but it's totally irresponsible.
That's not objectively false. It's not as bad as the flu for kids,
but Trump himself said, though, it's much worse.
It's much worse for older folks or obese people, as we've talked about incessantly. And we'll get to the airline that kicked a 19-month-old baby off a flight.
Good. Well, got to mask up, right? It's dangerous.
And I wrote how ridiculous that was. And one of the respondents on Twitter, it made me laugh out loud. I said, yeah, I bet you wouldn't dare sit next to that baby. And I'm going, what? You think I wouldn't sit next to a baby that didn't have a mask on?
I wouldn't sit next to a baby anyway, mask or no
mask. You don't
mask.
want to sit next to a baby, but you think a 19-month-old baby, like in his mother's
Yes.
arms, is going to give you coronavirus. That's stupid.
Very dangerous.
Brutal. We still don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into mask talk, but I still read every day medical experts, doctors saying it doesn't help. The cloth mask doesn't work. The one with the vent doesn't work. It's worse than having no mask.
Right.
Having a mask endangers you for other illnesses because it traps the germs. And there's still no definitive word on whether masks work or not. But
they work.
Lunatics. These lunatics that will punch you in the face, as we see on some of these videos on Twitter, if you don't have your mask on at the grocery store. It's just madness.
Did you see that Apple just made their own masks for just their employees? The people that worked and created the iPad and the iPhone made a mask for just their employees. Did you see this?
Is it the eye mask? What is it?
I don't know what they're calling it.
Going to get like your calls on it and texts. That's the next thing that's coming in late stage capitalism.
I have a Blue Lives Matter mask, which I'm hoping to wear somewhere.
No, you don't.
Offend somebody.
Do you really?
Yes, I can.
Why? That's so. Yeah, put it on for the TV. Put it on for.
All right, give me 1 second.
You're gonna get knocked out like that guy in Pittsfield, right? Wasn't that the guy?
Do you think for the fans would like this, the Blue Lives Matter mask, Dave? Can we televise this kind of?
I don't know if we're televised tonight, by the way. I don't know.
Because I'm on.
Yeah, we haven't been elevated to daily. We have to prove ourselves apparently. So we have.
I'll find it. Where did I put it? I don't know.
Where'd you get it?
It's a little tight. Got it online. My wife got it for me, and my son wanted one. My son wanted to get a MAGA mask. I said no. You're not wearing that around call. It's just to.
Does your wife wear Blue Lives Matter mask?
No, she has she has a normal mask. But I mean, it doesn't matter. I told you this last week. One day, there was a story about how the cloth masks, like that one, the Blue Lives Matter, don't work, and they're worse than nothing. So my daughter was pointing it out to me and said, "See, that mask doesn't work." And the next day, there was a story about how the masks with vents are worse than nothing, which is what my daughter had. So we both, in back-to-back days, learned that our masks were useless, which was just funny. I mean, you do it to, as Kirk Cousins said, you do it just so you don't upset other people. That's why you wear a mask. It doesn't have anything to do with health or the virus. It's just
I don't know about that. I mean, I do think, look, I mean, the president said it himself. This is through the air, Bob. I mean, it's not like surfaces. This is through the air. This thing.
I said, Bob, I think he said through the air, Bob, old buddy, old pal. You want to have dinner? You want to sit down and, we'll talk about Nixon again. I mean, it's just so absurd. The Woodward thing, again, here's what I'll say on this, Reimer. It's not a scandal, but it's the first thing, the first bombshell where I blame Trump. Like the Russia thing was totally made up. Ukraine, as we know, totally made up. Kavanaugh, totally made up. The mailbox thing, completely contrived, completely fabricated.
My mother is still waiting for her mail.
Tell her it doesn't matter. It's Massachusetts. I mean, that's the dumbest thing in the mailbox thing. They said, "Oh, he's stealing mailboxes in California." Even Trump knows California is hopeless. So why would he waste his time trying to suppress the vote in California? Anyway, since you're here and you're a media critic, and the single silliest scandal in the 4 years of Trump was the other day, obviously on Friday before Labor Day weekend, when the most obvious hit job, a political hit job I've ever seen, broke, the Atlantic story with anonymous sources. Even now, that idiot Goldberg, the Atlantic editor who wrote the story, is like admitting half of it was completely made up.
Oh, when did he say that? I must have missed that.
Something like that. He just said
something like that. Okay,
they got it wrong. The thing about the weather and the helicopter, they got it wrong.
Okay.
But even you have to admit that was ridiculous. That it was thin gruel. It was not substantive.
I'm a great liberal, and like every great liberal has always done, I wake up every morning and pray to our generals, because liberals have always loved generals. And I mean, Mattis and Kelly, these are my guys. John Brennan. These are my people.
These are hacks. And my girl Ann Coulter, who is back on Twitter, she was banned for a few weeks.
She was?
She supported Kyle Rittenhouse's right to defend himself.
Okay.
You're not allowed to do that. Kyle Rittenhouse, according to Twitter, and Facebook is a terrorist. I
Well,
mean,
he is.
A 17-year-old kid defending himself.
We have to talk, by the way, about Department of Homeland Security basically politicizing intelligence, Jerry, saying that the white supremacist threat.
Shut up with the white supremacists.
It's true.
That is so absurd. Every day we're watching Antifa scum and Black Lives Matter.
I don't even know what they are yet.
And every day I'm seeing them burn cities and beat people up and drink old ladies' drinks at outdoor cafes. And then
they are.
Yeah, you didn't see that one either. You just don't want. You close your eyes to this left-wing terrorism, these radical, violent. But I just want your take on the Atlantic because it was so silly, and it gets even sillier. They have 4 anonymous sources say Trump hates the military, which nobody believes. Nobody thinks that's true. It's not even a credible accusation, and nobody will go on the record and affirm it or confirm it. And just the opposite. Everybody went on the record, including John Bolton, who hates Trump, said it's absurd. So even you have to admit it's absurd.
Well, no, I don't think it's absurd at all because Trump has said all this stuff publicly. He has great antipathy for the military. He has great antipathy for generals. John McCain, that Gold Star family from the campaign. I mean, Trump hates the military. He always has.
The Gold Star family is a political family that hates Trump.
He has no respect for the troops or sacrifice. He's a selfish asshole. So, right. I mean, of course he
no respect for the troops. You can tell because he's bringing them all home and trying to not get them killed.
Yeah, he's bringing them all. Jerry, I agree with you there. You know, Trump the dove here. But listen, his term is almost up, and just now he's starting to withdraw troops.
It's not true.
Yes, it is.
It's not true. He's been withdrawing troops. Not enough, in my opinion.
We still have the same amount of troops in Iraq. Basically,
tell me what wars he started. I'll give you a list of Obama. Obama and Hillary Clinton in Libya and other places. Tell me what wars he started, what wars he's escalated.
He sent billions of dollars in arms to Saudi Arabia for one.
What war is that?
They're using it in their war against Yemen, the Yemeni genocide. And I mean, Jerry, we have the same troop levels in Iraq and Afghanistan now as we did 4 years ago when he took office.
Well, you get ready. In the next 2 months, it's going down, and that's the best thing you can do in October. I need to see it. I want to see it. I want to see the soldiers, the Marines loading up their suitcases and getting on helicopters and coming home and hugging their wives and children.
Yeah.
That will be a great win for Trump. And, that day he'll probably sit down with Mika and Joe and do an interview and distract from his own successes, which is what he did this week, essentially what he did the last 6 months with Woodward. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And, the generals and the political class and Raytheon, they might not like the fact that we're not going to be fighting this pointless war in Afghanistan anymore. I don't care, who declares victory or doesn't declare victory. Tomorrow is 19 years since 9/11. 19 years that we've been there next month. It's just bizarre that we are in this shithole country for 19 years, and anybody is against pulling out. The fact that anybody could make the case that we should stay there any longer is so silly, so insane.
I agree. I wish we weren't there. Unfortunately, until this Atlantic article came out, Trump was perfectly content with not removing a big number of troops. So this is purely him just covering up his story. I believe everything in that Atlantic article. I mean, he said this stuff publicly.
It's guys who lost limbs or lost their lives or losers and suckers.
Yeah, if they get captured, he said publicly if they get captured, they're losers. I mean,
he said that about one guy who he hates, the same guy who hates him. I mean, let's be honest. That he's not going to say anything nice about McCain. It was stupid. He shouldn't have said it, but it was a personal attack on John McCain, who hated him, who advanced the Russian hoax story, who was just an enemy of Trump. And you know how he handles that. He just fights back, sometimes nonsensically, but he fights back at a guy like McCain. And I understand. Anyway, he doesn't hate the troops, just the opposite. He wanted to have a parade in 4th of July in DC, a military parade.
Yeah, so they could honor him.
And he loves it. It might just be because he thinks it looks good and he thinks it's a good photo op, but he goes out of his way to support the military. Nobody believes he said those things.
I mean, there also was. Hold on. I mean, there's that story a couple years ago where he called that widow and said, "Hey, your husband, he knew what he was getting into." I mean, he says this kind of stuff all the time.
But here's how you know, and you understand this. Here's how you know the story is just a naked political hit job. Is you don't call for the story for an on the record comment. You don't call John Bolton, who was there, A, and B, who hates Trump.
Because John Bolton had a book to sell, like Bob Woodward. He was not.
Why don't you call John Bolton? For one simple reason, that it might not fit the narrative. And it turns out it didn't. John Bolton would not have supported this ridiculous premise, so they didn't call him. That is not journalism, Reimer. You know that. That is just strictly, advancing your political agenda and trying to do a favor and get like Nancy Pelosi off the front page and turn the attention to Trump with this. And I think stuff like that backfires. I'm not sure this Woodward thing backfires, but the Atlantic thing, without a doubt, backfires.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the Atlantic story, I think, ultimately doesn't matter much because, A, as I've said ad nauseum, it's stuff Trump has basically said publicly anyway. And B, I mean, like, the average person is very detached from the military. They just are. They're not really. So it's not. The tapes are far more damning because, as we know from Ray Rice, I mean, if you have tapes, whether it's video, audio, it always plays better than just words. So, right. I mean, this Woodward thing is much more damning. Again, because, Jerry, like, if you lost your job or you lost a loved one due to coronavirus, like, this could have been prevented with better leadership. Trump knew about it and they did nothing, and they still downplay it.
How could he have prevented it? I'm always curious. You say this all the time. What could he have done? He did the travel
by
ban
instituting a lockdown earlier, and by actually.
There was never. That's a local decision.
And by actually having some, well, there could be a national plan, a national testing plan, taking this seriously. He never did it. Still doesn't do it.
Lockdowns don't work. Just the opposite. Lockdown places have done worse than the places that don't lock down.
Well, no, that's not, Jerry. That's not true. I mean, look, Jerry, I have a lot of qualms with
the most draconian measures were taken in New York, New Jersey, Michigan,
and
Massachusetts.
The positive test rate,
the place with the highest death rate.
Right. In March and April, Jerry, the positive test rate in New York City has been at 1% for months. In Massachusetts, it's below 1%.
Cuomo killed everybody already.
Oh, okay. So they're all dead. I mean, it's look, I have a lot of issues with the way that Charlie Baker. We're now going through month 6 of the pandemic, and we're happy to talk about that. But if you're just talking about positive test rate and keeping COVID out, the strict lockdown states in the East Coast have done the best job. There's no disputing that.
Death is all that matters. Death rate is all that matters. It doesn't matter if some 18-year-old gets the virus and he's better in 3 days. That doesn't matter. In fact, that's a good thing. In fact, it's a good thing, which is why, and people are learning this now. As you'll see, was a rally in Connecticut. It's not some Confederate state that thinks the virus is a hoax. Connecticut, with a crazy, lockdown governor and crazy local officials all over, want to arrest you for not wearing a mask. Huge rally yesterday for high school football.
Yeah.
High school football. It is insane that these kids are being deprived of football or deprived of any sport or any school. I mean, it's just political. They are political. There you go. That's Connecticut. It's happening, and it's bad news for, the Charlie Bakers and Cuomo's and Ned and Murphy, Phil Murphy's, because people are educated and they know that high school kids are in no danger of dying. In fact, did you see that high school kid who allegedly died of COVID? Big, huge lineman. Right. 2 days later, they say, actually, it wasn't COVID. It's just, we've been lied to so many times the last 6 months, whether it's masks or lockdowns or whatever. People are sick of it, and I think it's going to get. You're going to see more of this, more of these, places where they're holding rallies and saying, "Why again are you deprived? Why again is the University of Michigan and Ohio State not playing football? Help me out. Why?
Well, I care much more. I mean, I don't give a shit about football. I mean, I care much more about the fact that,
I do, damn it.
Yeah, we need to watch 18-year-olds give themselves brain damage. That's what we need to watch. I mean, I wrote it last year for WEI. I think they should ban high school football entirely, and this was before the coronavirus, so I was ahead of the curve on this one. I was child abuse.
It's just so okay. So what about, I don't know, high school soccer? Should they play high school soccer?
No, because the point of football, as you know, we're both football guys, is to smash heads with each other. That's not the point of soccer. So no.
Which is fun. Smashing heads is fun. As for high school kids, they love it. And think of Ohio State, though. Think of Ohio State. Everyone on that team thinks they're going to play in the NFL, right? Or say there's 100 guys on the team. Probably 75 of them think they're at least going to have a shot at playing whatever special teams in the NFL. If you don't have a season and you're a senior or you're a good junior and you don't have a season, I mean, you're screwed. And you're saying, wait a second, why am I not playing football? Oh, that's right. This governor or this mayor or this school president, dean said, nah, I don't want to take any chances. Take any chances of what? Of what? Of a kid getting the flu?
Well, it's all these high school students too who, might have a chance for scholarships. I mean, they're getting that taken away. And not just football, it's every sport,
Right.
You can't play in Massachusetts.
I know how to win you over. Some of those transgender track stars, they're going to lose a chance.
I know it's a shame. It's a shame. Well, they were part of the Connecticut protest.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Connecticut's the hotbed for transgender
the hotbed for girls
track stars. Yeah. That's where they all grow up. But But I think, and I tweet about this all the time, and I think people are reaching the breaking point. You saw a protest in New York a couple of days ago where all the restaurant owners were screaming.
What do you mean? Cuomo's allowing them, Jerry, to have indoor dining to 25% at the end of September. Isn't that so nice? Thank you, Governor. He's great.
That's like tickling you. That's not getting it done. Can you imagine being a restaurateur? They say 25%. You look around and going, that barely pays for the electric bill. I need to open up and let people choose whether they want to take a chance.
Exactly. It's fucking insulting, and it's demeaning, and it's belittling, and it's so like I almost threw up reading that New York Times article yesterday about how, Cuomo is throwing restaurants a lifeboat. He's allowing them to open the indoor capacity at 25%. What kind of fucked up draconian world is that? Or, we thank our governor for allowing us to operate at a quarter capacity at the end of the month. I mean, what the fuck is that? And that a guy like Cuomo, who's writing a book about the coronavirus, loves this. He's never had more power. I mean, he loves this. They all like it, I think. I'm
glad to hear you coming around, because I agree. They wake up in the morning with a pup tent in their pants. They're aroused. They get to flex their muscles, and people beg for crumbs. Charlie Baker, please let me open 25. Please let my people come in my gym one at a time and use the equipment before I go under. And there are thousands and thousands of small businesses that are gone, never to return.
And they're all going to be gone.
Baker cries. Charlie Baker cries about pretend fishermen, makes them up and fake cries. Doesn't cry about the 5,000 restaurants that have gone under and all those small business people who invested their lives in those restaurants. Doesn't give a damn about them. He cares about make pretend fishermen in New Bedford. He'll cry for that. And Cuomo, this alleged liberal, alleged champion of the working people, just sees tens of thousands of business go under his watch. Doesn't flinch. Does not affect him at all. These are cold, cruel people. Baker, Lamont, Murphy, Whitmer. These are just real awful people. They see this suffering and they do not care, because they are aroused by their power, aroused by the control they have over our lives. And I'm glad you and I can agree on that, Reimer.
Well, we should though have like a relief. That's my thing. If you close the businesses, fine, for health reasons, but then have a relief package. Pay people to stay home. Just closing businesses and not giving people money, I've always said, is not a solution unless you want a lot of homelessness and unemployment, which we have, all over.
Well, New York's done. I'm not sure in my lifetime we'll ever see it come back. People are just bailing. There's a mass exodus out of New York. Businesses,
we'll see it.
Wealthy people, Cuomo knows. Cuomo knows his tax base is hitting the road. They're all moving to Florida or Maine or somewhere else.
They're moving to the Hamptons. It's the never-ending summer in the Hamptons.
That's true. It is a never. Well, at least for public employees. If you're a public employee, you work for the state. It is a never-ending vacation. That's what teachers unions want. Never-ending vacations. But let's get to you're a big sports guy. I want to get to some sports. You ready for some sports today? You know what today is?
What's today?
Today is the first time ever that the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, MLS, and WNBA are all playing today. First time ever, all 6 leagues. And I don't know about you, but
which one are you going to watch?
Well, I'm torn between the MLS and WNBA. I don't know about you, but I don't even know what. I don't even know which. I wouldn't know what team's playing. I wouldn't know what channel it's on. I don't care about the MLB, the NBA, the NHL, the WNBA, or MLS because football begins tonight. And I'm wondering, and you and I will disagree on this forever, but I'm wondering if the NFL is going to be stupid enough to get as obnoxious as the NBA with the protests and the trigger virtual signaling and the triggering and everything else. I know they're going to have some stuff on the field that says end racism, which will probably be very effective. I'm pretty sure once people see that, racism will be gone.
Well, that's good. Don't you want to end racism? I mean, who doesn't want that?
Of course. And you know what else I want? You know what else I think, Alex? I think Black Lives Matter.
Good.
All right.
Well, okay. I tweeted this last night. I was watching a great Celtics game, and I was like, I mean, really? Well, Marcus Smart's jersey says freedom on the back of it, so I have to turn this off. Too much politics for me.
I like freedom, and I'll give you Kyle Lowry. I give him credit because I think when you have education reform on your shirt,
I mean, you want charter schools.
I think
right wing.
No, here's what my theory is: you're mocking the whole concept because you just picked the dumbest thing on the list, education reform. Like that's really a passionate a thing you're passionate about. I don't believe that. I think he just put that on because he said this whole thing is dumb. But it just I don't know why you can't understand this, Alex. When you're watching a bunch of guys, some making 20, 30 million a year, and they're outwardly supporting a violent Marxist political organization, that doesn't sit well with some people. You understand that?
Why? Because you see like equality on the back of an NBA jersey and you break out in hives. I mean, these people are snowflakes.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. Black Lives Matter is a violent
political,
a violent Marxist political organization.
Marxist political organization.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, don't you get some irony though? I mean, to go back quickly to Woodward. So Trump is telling us about how bad, Marxism, Black Lives Matter. His only friend is Kim Jong-un, a violent communist dictator. I mean, so how does that couple?
I really don't think they're friends.
Your Excellency.
He's busy making peace in the Middle East. He doesn't even care about him.
Those are the letters we read each other. But no, I mean, Black Lives Matter is it's if you are turning off these great games because you can't handle something being painted on a court, then you are weak, is what I.
But I think if you're the commissioner or if you're an owner, you dread this. Here's the problem: is I watched the overtimes because I was on Twitter and someone said, "Oh, it's overtime," and then double, and I put it on. That's the first NBA action I've watched this summer.
Well, you're depriving yourself.
It was great. No, it was great. But I wasn't not watching because of the things on the back of the jerseys, but it just didn't, I don't know, the whole thing in the middle of summer, the bubble, it just didn't seem all that appealing. It was last night. That was a great double overtime. There's some great plays, action, scoring. I mean, both teams were scoring every time up the floor. Lowry just hit the most clutch shot. And it forced a Game 7. And I love all Game 7s. Game 7s are great. So I'll watch that tomorrow, or at least some of it. But you don't see why some people in America, some people who are casual fans, fringe fans, turn that on and turn it off. Just say enough. I hate the concept of we need an escape. An escape. And escape what? I mean, the whole idea of, please let me escape. But they do feel like, I've had enough Black Lives Matter. Just give me
it's not accurate. It's just not true. Nobody gives a no. It's not bothering anybody.
Well, the ratings are terrible.
Yeah, but the ratings are terrible because of what's going on in the world. It feels juvenile to watch sports. Like it's a weird thing that just. I'm not saying people overly think it either. It's just there's other shit going on in the world right now.
That's a good point.
Weird to watch fucking NBA players who are trapped in one location in Disney World or wherever the fuck they are. It just feels strange. It has nothing to do with what's on their jersey.
That is a good point. It does feel insignificant. So maybe I should look at it as an escape and say, oh, get away from the real world. But then if you think of it that way, then they're saying, Breonna Taylor, justice, and you're saying, what? I just want to watch basketball.
Hold on. They're saying no justice for Breonna Taylor in the post-game interviews. If you watch, so that's the thing. If you actually like the games, if you're a basketball fan or a football fan, how does what LeBron James says after the game is over affect your enjoyment of the game itself?
Because it makes him less likable. You don't like him.
Well, don't you like to root against LeBron? I mean, haven't we been doing that?
Yes, I do now.
For
I didn't used to, but I do now. But here's tonight. We don't know what's going to happen. We know lots of guys will kneel, and we know it'll say end racism.
So who cares? So they kneel. I mean, that to me is at this point that is like trite. I mean, they kneel.
I know you love that. You love Kaepernick. You hate America. We've already established that.
The Madden rating wasn't high enough. I'm very fired up about that.
Are you going to have him on your Madden team?
I am. Yeah, he's my starting quarterback.
Yeah, they show him raising the fist, right?
Yeah.
Do they show him kneeling? My question is he going to? Are they going to?
That's his other celebration.
Oh, it is. Okay.
The kneel down is his big move.
He's rated as highly as Ben Roethlisberger, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Colin Kaepernick.
He's rated higher than Kyler Murray, Jerry.
Higher than Jared Goff, a Super Bowl quarterback. And you get this loser who went 1-10 in his last 11 games. Anyway, we can get to Kaepernick because you love him and I hate him, and that's always fun. But anyway. Just pretend you're an actual, reporter here, a media critic, and you're watching it, observing it objectively. You don't see why, if you're the owner, the commissioner, you're saying, "Good guys, can we just play? Can we get past this?" If they all start taking a knee, if the names, as far as we know, the NFL is just going to have names on the back of the helmets, right? I haven't heard any different.
No, because I don't think, because if I'm an owner, if you're offended at, again, names on the back of a helmet, I don't want you anyway. I mean,
it's not offended. I guess it is offended, but it's turned off. Like enough of this. I'm sick of this obnoxious, virtual.
They're wearing a few slogans are painted on courts and fields. What's so in your face about it?
Oh,
I don't even notice it.
I'll tell you what, you don't notice it in the NBA in the back of the jersey. It looks ridiculous. Black Lives Matter is too long. The words are too long.
So that's why it goes
like up the guy's back and then down the other side.
I didn't know you guys were also, fastidious about this stuff. That's why you're not watching the NBA, because the Black Lives Matter, it looks weird on the jersey.
I do. You want to say offended? I do find it obnoxious that a bunch of guys making 20, 25, 30 million a year are supporting a violent Marxist political organization. Right. You're just going to have to live with that.
Right. By wearing slogans that say vote on the back of their jerseys. That's very violent.
20% of them aren't, 80% of them aren't even registered to vote, and they're telling me to vote. You don't have to worry about it. I will vote. I think,
unfortunately,
I think lots of them will not vote. Of course, they'll all be trapped in Orlando on election day.
Bobby, good. They can maybe swing Florida to Biden. Register them in Florida. There you go. Early vote.
I like Trump's chances in Florida. I think Biden has lost the Latino vote, or at least a large percentage of Latino vote. But I want to go back to this because it's tonight, and I think the ratings will be really good. Patrick Mahomes is the best show in sports, in my opinion. Watching him play is a pleasure, but. And I think people will tune in early. It's a whatever 8:25 kickoff, but people want to see what's going to happen. I'm curious. I assume there'll be a bunch of kneelers. There'll be a bunch of guys that have Jacob Blake's a accused rapist and violent felon. They'll have his name on the back of their helmets, but I'm not sure what else they can do. Maybe what might happen. Maybe the ref will kick out. Andy Reid, if he doesn't have a mask on.
Andy Reid is high risk.
Andy Reid is definitely.
I'm not even sure he should be coaching this year, to be honest with you.
Billy O'Brien kicked Billy O'Brien out for not having a mask, which was the most absurd thing in the history of sports. Joe West kicking Mike Rizzo out of a game when he was in the luxury box alone without a mask, and this obese umpire kicks him out of the stadium, I guess, or kicks him. I guess he went back to his office and watched it on TV, but it was just such a.
Right, he went back inside the luxury box.
Right. Just sat down and said, okay, I won't go out there. But if you haven't seen it, you got to see it to believe it. Joe West kicking Rizzo out of the game. But tonight, is I think Sunday, I'm more curious. Sunday, I'm more curious because I've been predicting that everyone's going to kneel on the first day, including Brady and Breeze. That will bother lots of people in America if Brady and Breeze both take a knee for the anthem. It will. I know you'll love it. Again, you'll love it. We all know you hate it. You hate America. You hate the country. You hate the anthem. But lots of people don't, Alex, and they're not going to like it.
Okay, 2016 was a great year. I mean, if you're still bothered by kneeling 4 years later, I mean, you need to find a new hobby, I think.
Things have changed, Alex. Things have changed a little bit in this country. People are aware now that Black Lives Matter is violent, and they are.
Okay, so Tom Brady, by kneeling during the anthem to show solidarity with his black teammates, is somehow supporting Black Lives Matter. Tom Brady, I think, I mean, you know him better than I do, is the most apolitical guy out there. If he does kneel, it would be to just show support for his black teammates. And what's wrong with that? Isn't that a good thing, having your teammates' backs?
You know what? I want to get to Brady the most, and you're right. I've followed him. I don't know him obviously, but I've followed him very closely.
You guys have exchanged emails.
Yes, we have. We've exchanged emails, and
there you go.
You know, how's the kids, that kind of thing.
Right, exactly. What kind of car does he drive?
He was driving an Audi A8 when he got T-boned in Boston that day. And missed practice. He was, called us, and then some guy slammed into him. But
I heard Jeff Benedict told you last week that was the biggest scoop ever. I'm like, really? That's the best you got?
I want to get to this. One of the strangest things I've ever seen Brady do, and that's saying something with you, Alex. And I need to get your take on this because hasn't got a lot of attention. You were willing to give Tom Brenneman a second life, a life. Whatever. I am. Throw him a life preserver, right? Which is very, very big of you.
Yeah, I'm like Cuomo. I'm allowing the restaurants to open at 10% capacity. But I'm giving Tom Brenneman.
Let him do minor league games.
I'll let him do maybe if he shows enough contrition. Yeah, we could do high school baseball. Yes.
I need your take on the Charlotte Hornet announcer because that could be the most outrageous canceling of anyone I've ever seen, and nobody's defending him. But we'll do that after I tell you about Shea Concrete. Shea Concrete, this is for you homeowners and you home builders. Do you know that Shea Concrete has a huge selection of precast concrete steps, the best in the business? You probably knew that. Whether you're building a new home, you're planning on replacing the stairs in your old home, Shea has great values with designs for any home. Available in concrete, you can customize your steps with beautiful stone, granite, or brick. I'm a stone guy, a blue stone guy. A new staircase can dramatically upgrade the front entrance of your home. It's not even like spending the money. It's investing the money in your home because you'll get it back on the other end. Your home will look better, be worth more if you get some new steps. In most cases, they can remove the old crappy steps and have you walking up new front steps within hours. Just make the call, get online. They will do the rest. Learn more about Shea's precast concrete steps at sheaconcrete.com. And also check out the Precast podcast, the best podcast in the precast business. You can learn all about what Shea can do for you and your business. And you can learn all about the business of precast concrete, all of that at sheaconcrete.com. All right, the Brady thing. Yeah, I had to watch this twice. It was online. Brady is in the middle of the most important preseason, no preseason games, but he's preparing for his new team. Nobody is under scrutiny like Tom Brady heading into this season. Maybe Mahomes, but I mean, he is the face of the NFL and he's 43. It's kind of a big deal. And online yesterday, and I assume it's somewhere, I don't know, probably on TV somewhere, but is this commercial for a line of eyeglasses, like Tom Brady endorsed eyeglasses. And I'm watching him going, this is what he's doing with his time after maybe it was before he reported to camp, but he's selling eyeglasses. Sometimes when he sells stuff, I find it so strange because he and his wife have, $750 million, and his time is very valuable. And somehow he has time to sell, to hawk. I mean, who cares what brand eyeglasses you get? Don't you just try them on? If they feel good and look good, you buy them. You don't say, ooh, are those Tom Brady glasses?
Well, are they luxury eyeglasses? Because
I don't know. Let's let Cullinane see if he can play this spot because it was just weird and
here we go.
Weird.
He looks good in them.
I can't help but laugh.
He looks good in them though, does he not?
He looks good in anything, Alex, but he looks like Clark Kent in that.
Yes. A little bit. Yeah, he
like
looks very
Clark
good
Kent,
in that.
but we can play the spot where he says, he's passionate about eyeglasses.
He is. He always has been.
You're right. He's weird. He is weird.
I think the weirder thing from him this week was that like letter that he wrote his parents from training camp. I know that was like an Instagram thing, but like that was a little strange. Dear mom and dad, camp is winding down. It's been a hot summer, but I've gotten a nice tan and I like to play football. I mean, what?
So I can't complain. And he's underdogs and underdog Sunday for the first time in 5 years, which is interesting. And everybody's Brady is the biggest draw in sports right now, at least at the beginning. Seeing him in a Bucs uniform, seeing him in the NFC is going to be strange, and it's going to be great TV, at least for a week or two. Maybe, if he's winning, if he beats Breeze, if he wins the first few games, it'll just build, and he doesn't get hurt, which, I'm sort of expecting at some point. 43-year-old guys get hurt. I hate to say it, but I feel like we might see Brady have a rough first season in the NFC, but we'll see. I'm rooting for him. Do you think there's any chance that Brady gets a better TV rating in New England than the Patriots Dolphins Sunday?
No, I don't think so.
No chance.
So. No, I don't think there's a chance of that.
Because no. I think Dolphins is not that's not a sexy matchup, especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick. If Tua were a quarterback, it'd be different. With Ryan Fitzpatrick against Cam Newton, it's not that exciting, but Newton on his own is kind of a good box office draw. Brady Breeze will get a huge number nationally, right?
A huge number nationally, but we've talked this before. I think there's really no love for Tom Brady in New England anymore. I think people have moved on entirely.
You think they're rooting against him?
I don't think they're rooting against him. I just don't think they care that much, to be honest. Now, maybe that changes if the Patriots start like 0-4, but It's going to be such a weird season anyway because there's no fans either. So, how would we even know if the Patriots suffer in popularity? I guess we would know from TV ratings.
I know you write about the media, sports media. Have you written about this plan? Because there's going to be some fans in some stadiums, right?
Kansas City tonight, there'll be like 16,000 fans, I think.
16,000. Yeah. So and which gives some places more of a home field advantage than others because, like Gretchen Whitmer's not going to allow the Lions to have fans, right?
No, those poor Lions. If only they had fans, they would.
But they're going to have some networks have said they will not have fake crowd noise. Others said they will. I read yesterday that the Jets are going to be allowed to play, or the network will play the JETS chant, like in canned, like in pre-recorded. So someone will hit a button and you'll hear JETS.
Right.
Fireman Ed will not be there.
No, maybe a hologram of Fireman Ed.
I read that Goodell opinion piece in the Washington Post last night. Can somebody explain to me how wearing a mask at coin toss matters when they're about to play a football game with no mask on?
It doesn't.
They're going to be required to wear masks.
Yeah, only one person up at the coin toss, and they have to wear a mask. Yes.
There's so many silly precautions. That are
it's performative. It's performative. It's performative.
That's true. Yeah.
What does that mean again? Performative.
Performative. It's just for the performance. Obviously, it makes no difference.
Just showing a message to showcase the importance of wearing a mask in today's world.
It's the same thing. Like you go to a restaurant, right? You don't wear a mask when you sit down because the virus doesn't interrupt the dinner. But if you go to the bathroom, you have to wear the mask, which is fine. I do it, but it's a lot of this mask wearing is just performative.
It's performative. Yeah. I agree. I tell you what else is performative is. Tom Brenneman, he's the Cincinnati Reds announcer. He used the F word for the short F word, the gay slur, talking about some city they were going to. It's the F capital, and we thought it was San Francisco, but whatever. It's city doesn't matter. He said it on a live mic. He thought he was off mic. Immediately, he knew his life was over. He issued an apology, got kicked out of the booth, didn't even finish the game, got suspended immediately from all his gigs, and he was a very busy, well-regarded play-by-play guy. Now he's still trying to get off the mat. He's still begging to get his life back. And people like Steve Buckley and Alex Reimer are willing to give him another chance. Of course, he said it's the first time he's ever used that word, which is kind of hard to believe.
Strange time to use it.
Strange time to break that out for the first time. but it is still just a word. And if he pays his penance and he's met with LGBTQ
Good.
community leaders or whatever.
Right.
He's
gotta
willing
meet
to do
with me.
anything. You're willing to let him go back to work, correct?
Yeah, but he has to show, my thing has always been he has to show a genuine effort to, be an ally to the community. Because I always say the F word to a gay person is like the 6-letter N word to a black person. If Tom Brennan was caught saying the N word on a live mic, he'd be done. And I think that there's a similar standard should apply to the F word. So it's a terrible word.
See, I disagree. You're wrong. And you admitted it to me a couple of weeks ago. You said you used that word when you were in high school.
Right. But
you didn't use the N word. You used
I did
the F
not.
word.
Only because of social norms. It was a thing that was just thrown around, but it shouldn't be part of the lexicon anymore. He said it in a workplace. I don't believe him that it's the first time he said it. I would like to see some actual work on Tom Brenneman's part. But, I think he's doing the right things. He's meeting with the leaders, and he's certainly putting in the time, it seems like. You read the New York Post article. Right. So, we'll see. But, I think he should. Because, again, it's all about education. If Tom Brenneman walks away from this with a much better understanding of why that word hurts, and then that's a good thing. That's better than just firing somebody and,
and again, the double standard of the different rules for different people is just so incredible to me. Like, Nick Cannon is going back to work on radio. He never lost his Masked Singer gig, but he's getting his radio show back. Nick Cannon, however, whether you like him or not, said the single most offensive things you will ever hear. He said white people were savages, were like animals, and it was a long, a long diatribe, and it was as racist as it gets, as offensive as it gets. He was dumped initially from his podcast and his whatever it is, serious gig, but he got it all back. Nick Cannon got it all back. If he's a white guy, that never happens. He just goes away. He's like Michael Richards. You never see him again. You never hear from him again. So Nick Cannon's back at work. Keep that in mind. Who said white people were like savages? They were like animals. And he went on this bizarre Farrakhan rant about melatonin, the color of your skin makes you superior. Really bizarre, racist stuff. He's fine now. He had support from a bunch of celebrities, Dwayne Wade and others, and he's fine. A guy named John Falk, Focké. The poor guy has gone through life with that name, like the Fockers. John Falk was a Charlotte Hornets announcer. First year, I think he was 1 year in, and he tweeted some mindless play-by-play guy tweet about how great the game was that he was watching, and it was Hornets, and no, it wasn't Hornets, somebody in the Jazz and Nuggets, and instead of typing Nuggets, he typed the N word. Obviously, it was a mistake. Obviously, he didn't do it on purpose. Nobody believes he did it on purpose. He got fired. And you know what, Alex? He will not recover. It was not even a news story. It's like the Charlotte Hornets, Michael Jordan's team, just said, this guy made a mistake, typed the wrong word. Obviously, he didn't type it on purpose. He made a mistake.
Well, what do you think he didn't type it on purpose?
Because even if it was, David Duke, he's not going to type that word and tweet about it when he's tweeting about the action in an NBA game. It was like, boy, we can get the actual tweet, but it was like, boy, great action in this Nuggets game. And he typed the N-word by mistake. And he felt bad. He apologized and he begged for mercy. And Michael Jordan said, screw him. Can you just explain to me, play along. Tell me you're the GM of the Hornets or the owner, Michael Jordan. What's the rationale? What's the argument for firing a guy who typed the wrong word?
The rationale, I guess, would be, so this was an autocorrect. If you're autocorrecting Nuggets to the N-word, that means you're probably typing the N-word often, right? Into your phone.
So the logic is we think he may have done it in the past because
it's autocorrecting to the N-word. That's a commonly used phrase for this guy, I think.
Is that how it works? Because I tweeted about how ridiculous this was, and a bunch of people said, they defended the decision to fire him for typing the wrong word. What if he said, I will hand the phone over to you, Michael Jordan. You can go through all my texts. You can go through all my tweets. If I ever typed that word before, then you can fire me. Wouldn't that be a fair deal?
It would be, right. Like Goodell wanted Brady's phone years ago, right? Jordan should have asked for this guy's phone. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely silly. But that's my only explanation. Maybe types it a lot, and maybe he's an a-hole anyway, and they're waiting for an excuse to get rid of him.
That's not a good argument. Say maybe he's an a-hole. He made a mistake, and his life is over. He can't get another job. You know that. You know that no one else is going to hire him to play-by-play.
The One America News Network might be hiring.
I don't think the guy did it on purpose. I don't think there's any evidence that he typed it in the past.
White supremacy is on the rise.
And you're laughing, you're kidding, but I think the guy's life is over. He's ruined, and he gets to sit back with nothing to do except watch Nick Cannon on TV. Nick Cannon, who said white people are animals. I like to know the rules. I like to have one standard for everybody. I guess that's pie in the sky, right? That's never going to happen.
Well, I mean, the Nick Cannon thing, didn't he retract his statements, right, or something?
I don't think so. Well,
I think he did. I know Dwayne Wade did, and Deshaun Jackson. There was a whole spell like for 2 weeks where we had a lot of anti-Semitism flying around, and then
we have it again since Kamala Harris went to visit Jacob Blake Sr.
Oh, stop!
Stop what?
Oh, Kamala Harris is anti-Semitic? Is that what you're going to tell me?
No, Jacob Blake Sr. is a vile anti-Semite.
How do you know?
I've seen his posts. I mean, you got to read up. You got to read up, Alex. You're part Jewish. This should bother you that the most important vice presidential candidate ever went to visit Jacob Blake Sr., an anti-Semite by any standard, a wild Farrakhan disciple and Jew hater, and Jacob Blake Jr., an accused rapist who terrorized the mother of his children, who raped her in real disgusting fashion, who took her keys, who took her car, who resisted arrest, who reached for a knife. She met with those two people and said they're an incredible family, and she's proud of them. And no one bats an eye. I guess anti-Semitism isn't really a big deal anymore. Racism is out and homophobia is out, but anti-Semitism is not so bad. That's the way.
I mean, look, I would say that again. The Jacob Blake thing, like again, he was shot 7 times in the back. Okay, he was unarmed, and his kids were in the car. His kids were in the car, and I don't think the officers, when they were shooting him 7 times in the back, really knew that about his father's Facebook posts or knew about his previous.
But Kamala knows about it. She goes.
Does she? How does she know about it?
Because I know about it. I mean,
yeah, but she doesn't. But she doesn't read like Gateway Pundit like you do. I don't think that she should. It's good.
I mean, you can't lionize Jacob Blake, Jr. or Senior. I'm
not lionizing any of them. I'm just saying, why does a man need to be shot 7 times in the back like that?
He was reaching for a knife. That's
okay.
Why.
But I don't think that that
endangered the kids. It's not the cops' fault that was doing resisting arrest. They tased him. It didn't work. I mean, he's a violent felon. He was a violent fugitive. You know why? This is going to get worse before it gets better, because the cops aren't going to get charged. That's what if they do, they're not going to get convicted. And if like the cops in Atlanta, the cop in Atlanta who shot Rayshard Brooks, if he gets acquitted, of course the DA was looking for the death penalty, which is absurd. Then you're going to have another round of violence. God forbid if Derek Chauvin gets acquitted because George Floyd was on fentanyl, and I don't want to see that. I don't think that should happen. But if it does,
you're just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's a possibility. They overcharged him. Keith Ellison overcharged him. It just feels like if you're in Antifa or Black Lives Matter, the violence so far has worked. It has succeeded, and you're going to do it again. Because you don't pay much of a price. God knows, most of the rioters are in and out of jail in 10 minutes and pay no royal price, as we learned from that Reinhold scumbag who shot the Trump supporter. He got busted with a gun at a riot a month earlier, and they let him walk 5 minutes later.
It's like Kyle Rittenhouse, who police were showering him with water and good cheer before we, killed 2 people.
Where he protected himself, defended himself. How about that? That's a good one. Rittenhouse, they're going to drop the charges. They're charging with first degree. They will drop the charges, and he will walk out of jail. Then what?
I can't believe you're supporting domestic terrorism.
Am I? How am I doing that?
By supporting Kyle Rittenhouse.
Alex, if you've seen the video, it's dictionary definition of self-defense. I mean, they're about to smash him in the head with a skateboard. One guy, another guy, the guy whose arm he shot, had a gun and he was ready to shoot him.
Yeah,
I mean, he's walking.
He was getting stuff thrown at him.
No, he was about to be shot dead. There's no chance you convict Kyle Rittenhouse. And the fact that they're trying is a mistake, because when he walks, hell, Antifa's already like made it clear they want to get him. They're going to get him. They want to get him in jail. But he's going to walk, and it's going to get bad, because right now the violent agitators feel like what they're doing is working, and there's no reason to let up now. It's too bad. But anyway, you got any good stuff you're working on? Have you written anything worth reading?
I always write everything is worth reading that I write, Jerry. There's no doubt about that. I will see about the NFL. I'm thinking of a good NFL a good NFL take before the big opening.
Are you hoping that is a lot of kneelers tonight? Are you hoping?
I think kneeling is passe at this point. So if you kneel, sure.
What do you want to see? Fists?
Do more. I want to see a total anthem. I want to see the anthem stop being played in general. But
aren't they playing the black anthem as well as the white anthem?
What is the black anthem?
I don't know. I never even heard of it, but that's part of the plan. They're going to play the black anthem.
I want every player to raise their fist after they do a touchdown, like Kaepernick and Madden.
Yeah, well, that's the only time we'll see Kaepernick, because he's afraid to suit up and actually play. He's afraid he'll embarrass himself. It's too bad. It'd be a great, great story. That's one thing we can all agree on. We would love to see Colin Kaepernick under center once again.
What's your Super Bowl pick, Jerry? You love
Patriots Bucks. Brady against Belichick.
That's crazy. Unbelievable.
I just got an alert that Tom Brady is a guest on a podcast today that I listened to on Dak Shepard's Armchair Expert, an hour and a half with Tom Brady.
Who's that?
Listening.
Who's Dak Shepard?
You don't know Dak Shepard? He's married to Kristen Bell. He's a fantastic podcast.
He's a rehab guy, a former drug addict.
Great interviewer.
And he's kind of like Joe Rogan light, long interviews, celebrities like him.
I just clicked it very quickly, and the first thing that comes out of that, well, I clicked like halfway through. The first thing I hear him say is, the thing I like about you, Tom, is you don't use your megahorn like everybody else does. As if Tom Brady doesn't preach his healthy living on everybody he can.
That's what he says.
Yeah, it's the first.
Yeah, they're both kind of self-help kind of guys. Yeah. And they'll just sit there and talk about how we all have to live healthier lives.
Well, we do. But I mean, Brady, honestly, at this point, I'm like, I've kind of heard it all from Tom Brady. Haven't you? I mean, what more is there?
I've heard it all, but we haven't seen it all. We've never seen him play in another uniform. We've never seen him
agree.
without Belichick.
I'm fascinated by him playing with the Bucs this year, but I'm not fascinated by another long Tom Brady interview. Are you?
No, in fact, no. It's not. I mean, I'm going to listen to Joe Rogan with Mike Tyson. That's one thing I'm planning for the weekend. Although I've mentioned this before.
How long is it? Do you have 4 hours?
What's the guy's name again? Joe Rogan last week sat down with a comedian, Russell.
Oh, yeah, I forget that guy's name. Yeah, yep.
And I mentioned this the other day, Alex, but the interview is 5 hours and 20 minutes. 5 hours and 20 minutes with I'm looking at Tyson's only 2 hours. Tyson's only 2 hours and 13 minutes. That's a brief one for Rogan. But Duncan Russell, that's the guy's name.
Oh, okay. Yep.
5 hours and 20 minutes, and it gets a lot of downloads, a lot of listens. Duncan Trussell, 5 hours and 20 minutes.
How does that work? It must be bathroom breaks or something, right? I mean, they have great stamina, like camels.
I think. I don't think it's live, so they, obviously can take all the breaks they want. But I mean, how could anyone be that interesting? I mean, you're right. Tom Brady's not an hour and a half interesting. He's just not, unless.
At this point, right?
Unless he's saying something new, which I'm sure he's not. I'm sure it's all about healthy living and drinking your electrolytes and.
It's admirable to not give a shit, though. Like, Jerry texts me every day about how long a podcast should be and what time we should upload and all this stuff.
No, I don't know.
I don't give a shit.
I don't know. I wish I knew. I mean, nobody knows. Nobody knows the ideal length. Nobody knows the ideal time that it should know, the ideal frequency. There's nobody I've talked to in the business who says, here's how it has to be done, which is good. You're right. Rogan breaks convention and does strange things and just keeps working for him. And maybe, you know what? Maybe I will listen to Dax and Tom, because I've never heard Dax's podcast either, but it's very, very popular. But anyway.
It's fantastic, yes.
Anyway, it's not quite as popular as Out Sports.
It is not.
What's your podcast called again on Out Sports?
Sports Kiki. It's a great
Sports
name.
Kiki.
Yes.
That's all about gay guys in sports, right?
I interviewed a gay talk show host a couple weeks ago. Another one. I found him.
Really?
Yeah, well, he's a producer on WIP, and he was talking. I was nice. I made him feel like he's an equal to me. He was like, yeah, we were both doing crazy shit on the air. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure we were. We're doing the same thing. He was telling bathhouse stories too. Who knew? Oh,
great. So if you want to hear that, you can find it at Outsports. You can also read Alex at Forbes.com and many other places.
All sorts of places.
The hardest working commie in the business. All right, Alex, I appreciate it, bud. We will talk to you again next week.
See ya.
And thanks to Shea Concrete and Allied Paving, and thanks to DCU, and thanks to all our wonderful sponsors. You can support us by supporting them. We really appreciate it. Anything else, Cullinane?
Rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. How about like 25 by Monday? Will that work?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Hopefully they won't shadow ban them and remove any.
Because, they're doing weird things to us, but we're watching it.
We're fighting the man. So support us because we are fighting big tech censorship. We're taking them all on. And we'll be watching all the NFL action on the weekend. And we'll be recapping it on Monday. I will, seriously. I'm curious. I'm going to watch the Patriots. I'm going to watch the Bucks. I'm going to watch the kneeling. I'm going to watch the fists in the air, and it's going to be an interesting sport. It feels like sports is back finally. I think this NBA and MLB, that doesn't really count. Football is back. Sports is back. We're looking forward to it. We'll be watching. We'll be talking about it on Monday. I'm Jerry Callahan. This is the Callahan Podcast, and we will talk to you then.